Hi everybody. I am Lisa Franklin. I am co-president of the Sisterhood at Temple Beth El with Karen Schloss. And we are rounding the corner to 1 year of Zoom events. And I couldn't be more excited or more honored to introduce to you, everybody here, a dear friend of our family, Haiti Schleifer. I have known Haiti since I was a little girl. In the early 1980s, we met, and she has always just had this special energy that I've always enjoyed being around. And when I met my husband, we hadn't seen each other for a few years, but when I met my husband, the week after we met, invited me to his mother's 50th birthday, where I found Haiti again. And just so remarkable. I remember more about Louise's 50th birthday party than my own 50th birthday party because of Haiti. And she is a remarkable psychotherapist. She's been practicing for decades, and her calm demeanor is something that I think everybody, it's remarkable really how peaceful and calm she is, and how she can bring you back to listening to another person. Another really amazing experience that we had was when Jonathan and I got engaged. Louise gifted us a weekend retreat with Haiti and Yumi, she and her husband, and it was transformative in our relationship. And I still go, I try to still go back to the lessons that we learned that weekend. Even now, we've been married almost 30 years. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you Haiti Schleifer. And I really can't say anything more than I've already said. And when you hear her speak, you'll know why I love her so much, and why my mother-in-law Louise loved her so much. So.
Thank you. Oh, Lisa, this was a wonderful, wonderful introduction. Thank you so much. And hello to everyone. I'm very happy to be here tonight because I decided I'm doing this in memory of my wonderful, wonderful friend Louise, the mother-in-law of Lisa. I adore my friend Louise. We lost her in April, and did a Zoom funeral and a Zoom Shiva. And in a way, there was something very moving about it because everybody came to talk about Louise, and I heard things I myself didn't know. And I think Louise is looking now. She's seeing this special event and she's cavelling big time. I can just watch her being happy about this event. Tonight, I decided that I would tell you 4 stories, and in each one of them are embedded the principles that I want to teach tonight. And after each story, I thought I would ask 2 of you to say what has touched you the deepest in that particular story with that particular principle of life. And so I'm going to start where I live right now. On April 13, Yumi and I, my husband, my precious man, he and I are going to celebrate 56 years of marriage. And a year and a half ago, Yumi was diagnosed with neurocognitive impairment. And in order for me to embrace this new phase of our life, I followed his example. First of all, I want to tell you that he has had the courage to change so many times in our marriage that every time he changed, and I realized he's going to transform a lot, he's a courageous man, I decided to call him my next husband. And I must tell you, I've had 28 husbands till the new one now. And so I knew I had to say goodbye to my 28th husband and really grieve that man so that I could embrace and love my new guy, my 29th husband. And I took an example from him because 25 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was a terrifying diagnosis. Yumi and I were just terrified. And we shared with each other how scared we are. And suddenly he says to me, tell me, Haiti, how long should we be terrified? Let's say 2 hours. Let's say 3. Let's even say 4 hours. But he said, after that, when we decide we stop being terrified, it's not a problem to be solved. It's an adventure to be lived. And he said to me, you know, we're going to give a name to this adventure. And the name that he gave the adventure was Rallying Around the Boob. And we rallied around the boob. And everybody who rallied, we called them the Boob Brigade. And we had an international boob brigade. And when we went to a doctor, we would say, are you willing to be in the boob brigade? And if the doctor didn't find that funny, he wasn't our doctor. She wasn't our doctor. And so based on that, I decided that we are now living a new adventure. It's not a problem to be solved. It's an adventure to be lived, and it needs a name. And I decided to name it Rallying Around the Essence. Because what I'm noticing is that Yumi is truly in his essence. It's as if he is a pure neshama, just loving and peaceful and serene. He doesn't have some of the painful war memories that he had. He doesn't worry about anything. He smiles and delights in every single moment of life. He looks at me and he'll say, he says very little, but he'll say, I am so lucky. And I'll say, Yumi, why are you lucky? He'll think and he'll say, you are so generous. And so he just speaks love. And you know, we have times now for what I call eternal shower. It's part of the adventure. Take all the time in the world to give Yumi a shower, and afterwards, a Nivea cream massage. And the other day I said to him, Yumi, how could you survive all these years without Nivea cream massage? And he looked at me with that smile he now has, and he said, it's a miracle. I do think it's a miracle. And so the principle here is that our relationships and our life are not a problem to be solved. They are an adventure to be lived, to be embraced, to be taken in fully, to be lived with every fiber and passion of our being. And that principle, Yumi and I have followed and now are living again. I decided as a result, I'm not a caregiver. We are each other's care partner. I care for him as deeply as I can, and he cares for me as deeply as he can. So here's my first story with a principle that says life, relationships are not problems to be solved. They are adventures to be lived fully. And I'm going to stop right here and just listen to two of you who would like to say what in this story and in this principle has touched you the most.
So we're going to ask people to use the raise hand function. If you go to reactions, and Lisa and I will just pick and unmute those. So if anyone has a reaction, I'm in tears already. So Barbara, I'm going to unmute you, ask you to unmute and go ahead. Barbara, you'll need to unmute. If you can't unmute, we're going to have to, Barbara, we can't hear you. So we're going to have to go to someone else. Lisa, do you see anyone else with a hand up?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Very short.
Very short. I wanted my husband to listen to a problem, and he said, what do you want me to do about it? I said, absolutely nothing. I just want you to sit there and listen. So this is a difference between men who like to solve problems and one that will listen to how you feel about something.
Thank you for that. Oh, goodness.
Anyone else with a hand up or you can unmute if we don't see you. Okay, Haiti, I think we're good to keep.
I see Denise
Oh, go ahead.
Kirschbaum.
Denise, you need
You
to
unmute yourself.
unmute.
12 and a half years ago, my husband was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and we had 6 weeks from diagnosis until he passed. And those 6 weeks are 6 weeks that I wouldn't trade for anything. They were truly an adventure. And the best way I can describe it was that we lived in the moment. And we didn't look ahead to, oh my goodness, what's going to happen. He talked about how lucky he was to have family with him. And I felt very lucky that I had that 6 weeks. So I agree with everything Haiti said.
Wow, you really together embraced the adventure of the moment and lived it fully with every fiber of your beings.
Yes, I did.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's very inspiring. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to continue here. And what I want to talk to you about is how Yumi and I became conscious beings. Because I have to tell you that when we married, we were the Olympic champions of unconsciousness. We didn't even know that there was such a thing as consciousness. And so we went on a honeymoon and we were in Japan. And Yumi bought a Minolta camera that he had been dreaming of forever and ever. The camera came with a manual on how to have a good relationship with the camera. And Yumi's an engineer, so suddenly he has a relationship manual for him and his camera, and he really got into that book, 254 pages, and he was engrossed. Oh, the young woman I was said, but Yumi, you gotta look into my eyes. We gotta talk, we gotta express feelings. And the survival dance started there. And what was the survival dance? I would pull on him, schlep him to me, beg him, and he would withdraw and pull away into a book. And what I realized now that I know a lot of couples, that our survival dance actually starts in the honeymoon. We were not aware at all that we were beginning a dance that, because we didn't know how to solve it, would get worse and worse and worse. And the only way we knew how to solve things at the time was that we made a decision that when we entered a Shabbat, so that we can really make it holy, we were going to take a bath together. It was our mikvah. And we would be in that bath and we would talk through everything we needed to talk through. But when we let the water drain, we would really let go. And so sometimes we said, no, not yet. Let's not let it go yet. When we let it go, when we drained the water, we really did let go. And we remember one time our young son, Yigal, at the time 3.5, answered the phone and said, no, my mom and dad cannot come to the phone. They're in the tub and they're going to be there for a long time. So our kids knew that bath was a long bath. But we had made the decision that we couldn't step into Shabbat with our power struggle and we would let it go. But we had really no idea how to untangle that dance in which I desperately pulled on him and he desperately pulled away. And I remember when we moved to Orlando, Florida, one time we were at a corner and I was so in despair that I took Yumi's shoulders and I said to him, talk to me. And then a car passed by and I thought to myself, there's going to be a couple in there. And the woman will say to the man, you see that lady there shaking her husband? That's my therapist. Ooh, it was really embarrassing. And yet I had no idea what to do. And so one day in the living room of our little apartment in Packwood Apartments, I said a few words that if we were in a Woody Allen movie, there would be subtitles. And the subtitle would say, Yumi, I love you. I long for you. I adore you. I miss you. But what I said was, I'm leaving. And I didn't mean leaving you. I meant I'm going for a walk. But the way I said it could really be misunderstood. And I went for a walk thinking, what am I gonna do? I come home, and for the first time in our marriage, my man was sobbing. He was on the couch, crumpled, sobbing. I'm not a good man. I'm not a good husband. I'm not a good father. I'm not a good human being. And he couldn't stop sobbing. And I didn't know what to do. I wanted him so much to feel feelings, but those were not the feelings I wanted him to feel. So what did I do? I called my friend Louise, Lisa's mother-in-law. I called Louise. I said, Louise, Yumi is sobbing. He is in the worst sense of worthlessness I've ever even known that he feels. What should we do? And Louise saved our life because she said, look, I have a workshop that I really want you to go to. And the workshop was in re-evaluation co-counseling. I had never heard of re-evaluation co-counseling. And Yumi and I took Louise's advice and we went to the workshop. Yumi went as Yumi Schleifer, and I went with a hat that says clinical psychologist. So Yumi learned a lot. And I must say, I learned nothing. I was in judgment. I knew better. And what Yumi learned was that all of us develop a survival pattern, given the hurts we've gone through and not having the skills to work them through. And so we develop the survival patterns, but our survival patterns are not who we are. Who we are as human beings is we are kind, we are funny, we are intelligent, we're radiant, we're giving, we're generous, we're big as humans. And that essence of the human being never goes away. It stays intact inside of us, no matter what occurs to us, no matter what the hurts, what the losses, what the traumas, the human essence remains intact in us. And Yumi really took that message in because he went through a lot during the Second World War, losing his two sisters. And in boating, refugees, they were in a refugee boat and the boat was torpedoed and all the survivors machine gunned. And he was going to be on that boat with his brother, but there was no more room. And he lost his sisters and his beloved sisters. The pain of loss and multiplied with so many other wartime hurts that he had closed off and he had pushed away close connection. And he suddenly realized, my essence is intact. I'm as loving as I always was. I'm as kind as I always was. I'm as generous as I always was. And for 2 weeks, he had one insight after another insight after another insight. He couldn't stop talking. And I was just in heaven. I got to know my man in those 2 weeks. But after 2 weeks, he had a heart attack. His arteries had shrunk from the closed survival pattern. And suddenly for 2 weeks, he was just opening everything up and the arteries couldn't take it. And he had a heart attack. And here I want to tell you what he told me in the coronary care unit. he said to me, you know, Haiti, I am coming back home. My survival pattern is staying in the hospital. And when I saw that he understood that distinction, survival pattern, essence of the person, and that he had made a commitment, I'm coming back, my survival pattern stays here. I said to him, when you are completely strong, we are going back to that workshop. I'm taking off my cap, clinical psychologist. I'm going as Haiti Schleifer because I have a lot to learn. And that second workshop was really our first step into consciousness. We learned that all of us need pure, delighted attention from another person who says to us, it is so good you were born. You are beautiful. And you know, in England in 1942, there were orphans in hospitals from the bombings. And something occurred that these orphans were dying and nobody understood why. They were, first of all, they weren't thriving, and then they were dying. And what they figured out, which became the basis of a big theory called attachment theory, they figured out these little babies were receiving everything, food and a clean bed and changed and everything. But what they weren't getting is that delighted attention that says, Kuchki, Butchki, you're the sweetest. And I'm so glad you're here. And I just love you. And just let me hold you and kitzel you and snuggle you. The nurses were being professional. They weren't kitzeling and cuddling these little babies who needed the eyes that look at them and say, you are a miracle. And what we learned that weekend is that not only do we need this as a baby, we need this and deserve it for the rest of our life. That we deserve the kind of full, delighted attention from another human being. And we learned something called co-counseling, which we then practiced, which was to divide time, to look into each other's eyes. Each person gets to say 4 things. What's new and good in my life? What is a minor distress? What is something that I really need to get off my chest and discharge fully? And finally, back to the present, my favorite dessert, let's say. And so we learned to really begin to share with one another the deepest part of ourselves with the delighted attention of another who says, you are magnificent. And that was the beginning of what then developed, and I'll tell you more about it, but I'm going to stop right here and again ask for 2 people who from this story want to share what touched them the most.
So again, if you can use the reactions to raise your hand, and Lisa or I will call on you, or you can unmute yourself if no one else is raising their hand. Oh, we have a hand raised. We have a thumbs up.
Here. Okay, I'm unmuted.
Go ahead, Clarice.
So I think what touched me the most about the story is that your husband was finally able to get the closure that he needed to relieve that feeling of mourning for his sisters, and how something like that could be so important in his mind that he couldn't see even beyond it at times. So that was something that I thought was really, really remarkable.
Yes, thank you for that. And that's exactly right, because the survival pattern kept him closed off. And he was finally able to just open with eyes that say, you're magnificent, Yumi, and really be able to grieve all the losses, the sisters and all the losses of the war. Yes, indeed. We'll take one more if we've got another one.
You can either unmute or raise your hand. I'll just say quickly, I think we remember to say that I love you and you're so wonderful and much are all the people outside, but we often neglect our system. I mean, that's what stuck out to me of what you said. I think we're good at like loving on the world at large or people we don't know so well. Like that's easy to be like, oh, you're so wonderful. You look so wonderful. But inside our system, it's harder to do that.
When
That
you
was kind of
say
my reaction.
Jessica, Rabbi Jessica, inside our system, you mean inside our,
Our immediate like what you're saying with you and your husband or
right,
us with our kids, you know.
right. In our closer family, in our closer,
Right.
right. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. As
Like
in,
as a rabbi, sometimes my kids are like, you're better to the temple kids than to us. Like you give them so much attention and love, and you know, it's hard being a rabbi's kid, they'll tell you. 11 kids will tell you, I'm sure. Too.
yeah, it's a reminder that they're watching.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So this was the beginning of consciousness for us. And from there, we began to look outside. What else do we need to learn? And what we noticed was that even though we knew how to give each other good attention and how to go deep inside and bring things out, a little bit of that power struggle between us was still there. And then we heard about something called Imago relationship therapy and theory. And we went to a workshop. Yumi and I really did go to quite a few workshops to sort of develop this consciousness. And we learned something quite amazing. We learned that couples find the most incompatible human being in the world to be their partner because that incompatibility allows them to grow and develop and reconnect to parts of themselves that the partner is connected to, but we are not. And so we find the person who's going to give us the worst relational nightmare. But it's not a new nightmare. It's a nightmare we bring into the relationship from our journey. And with that partner and with the right skills, we can begin to dissolve that which we bring in. And so Yumi and I started learning in Imago relationship therapy. We learned something called the Imago Dialogue. And the Imago Dialogue was a very important next step for us. There is a sender, there's a receiver, and the sender can say everything they need to say, and the receiver says, I hear you say, have I got you? And then the receiver says, you know what? You make a lot of sense. I understand exactly what you're saying. And then you explain it. And I imagine that you feel and you let the partner know what are the feelings you think that they might have. And this dialogue became something very important to us because even though we co-counseled, we couldn't really as a couple yet talk to each other about the deepest emotions towards each other. And so we learned the dialogue. And I'm going to tell you about a dialogue we had where we made a profound discovery that gave us our next step. So Yumi and I were on our way to our 23rd wedding anniversary. It was going to be in Vancouver Island. And we were all excited to go. And Yumi pulled out of the closet a white jacket, a rain jacket. And I said, Yumi, you're not going to take that jacket, right? Yeah, I'm taking the jacket. oh no, Yumi, this jacket is like, it's got some spots on it. It's a little bit torn. You're not taking the jacket. I'm taking the jacket. Don't take the jacket. I'm taking the jacket. And the power struggle started, and we went to sleep back to back. In the morning, we left, and on the way there, he says, I'm not going to wear it a lot. We got down from the plane, and it's raining, and out comes the white jacket. And I feel like this big cloud somehow comes over me. And so in the car, I said to Yumi, you know what? Let's do a dialogue. We know how to dialogue. Let's do a dialogue. And so we stopped the car, and I invited Yumi, and Yumi said, I'm going to listen. And I said, Yumi, I don't know what it is about that jacket, but I hate the white jacket. Yumi says, I hear you say, you really hate the white jacket. And I told you, don't take it. And you said you're not going to wear it. And here you are in your white jacket, and it's got spots, and it's torn on the inside. And Yumi listens and repeats everything. And he looks at me with those eyes I talked about, the eyes that say, I'm with you and I love you, and talk to me. I'm present. And as he repeats what I say, suddenly a lid opens up, and my whole childhood shows up. My parents coming back from the war, having been in camps, in France, in the Vichy France camps, having been in a refugee camp, having done labor. And here they are back in Belgium, and they want their daughters to have real vacations, but they can't afford it. And so they scrum together money, and we go to Switzerland. And we are there with other Jewish families who are well dressed. And my father has a jacket that I'm ashamed. It's got a bit of spots, and the lining is a little bit torn, and I'm ashamed of my father. And suddenly, with that memory comes the absolute gratitude I have for my parents, for their generosity of spirit to want us to have vacations, and to want, here they're coming out of a war, to want us to have the very best. And now I am sobbing. And while I'm sobbing, Yumi is sobbing, because he knows exactly what all those losses are about. And the two of us are holding each other for eternal time, sobbing the losses together. And I cannot tell you how long that time was, but suddenly we looked at each other and we said, we've just been in an encounter. We've just been in a place we never have felt together. And we feel like we were in eternal time. What have we just experienced? Sort of the magic of two souls connecting profoundly. And we looked up the encounter because the Jewish philosopher Martin Buber describes the encounter in I and Thou, in the book I and Thou, the encounter of the souls. He says, when two human beings meet each other authentically, they are experiencing the encounter, and they are in eternal time. He also says, when two human beings meet each other authentically, God is the electricity that surges between them. And in that car, Yumi and I truly felt that God was the electricity that surged between us and brought our whole family together there, and brought such healing for both of us. And we decided we have to understand how to teach couples to enter the zone of the encounter. And that's when we studied Martin Buber and added a completely new way of coming together that we call the three invisible connectors. And 3 invisible connectors are, number 1, the relational space. Martin Buber says, your relationship lives in the space between you. It doesn't live in one of you. It doesn't live in the other of you. It doesn't even live in the dialogue between you. It lives in a space that is sacred. And our job is to take 100% responsibility to kedushify the space. Make it kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. And I like to say that the space between the couple is the playground of the child. And so the more a couple knows how to kedushify the space, how to make it really sacred, the more the children play in a sacred playground. So that's one invisible connector, the space. The other one is a bridge. There's a bridge between us because our worlds are so different. A good marriage is bilingual, like I speak Yumish and Yumi speaks Haitish. We've crossed the bridge so many times to each other that we now know each other's language. And so the bridge is there, and it's a narrow bridge, like the Rabbi of Bratslav says, Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tsar me'od. The whole world is a narrow bridge, and don't get scared to cross it. And so between the couple, here is a gift we get under the chuppah. It's a narrow bridge between our worlds. And our job is to learn how to cross the bridge with new eyes, as if we are meeting our partner for the very first time. There's a French poet by the name of Marcel Proust. He says that the adventure of life is not the discovery of new landscapes, but the capacities to see the ones we know with new eyes. And so that's the way we cross the bridge, with the new eyes of Marcel Proust. And we discover really that in the world of our partner, there's a different rhythm, different music, different language, different culture. And with those new eyes, we come to learn. That's the second invisible connector. And the third invisible connector is our capacity as human beings to be in the zone of the encounter. All of us as humans know the encounter. We know it with our partner, those magical times where suddenly we're so together, our neshamas feel like one. That's the encounter. Sometimes we go into nature, and suddenly nature is so beautiful, and we smell everything, and we see everything, and we hear everything, the encounter in nature. Sometimes we have it with music. We can hear a piece of music we know very well, but suddenly we enter the zone of the encounter with it. And that's the encounter. And as humans, we are able to enter the zone of the encounter with each other. And so how are these 3 connected? When we kedushify the space, when we make it sacred, and we take 100% responsibility for the quality of the space, and we cross the bridge to our partner with new eyes and welcome them on the other side, we create the conditions to enter into the encounter. And so there are 3 things that I now teach couples. I teach them the art of hosting. How do I take you into my world? How do I explore my world honestly with you? How do I vulnerably speak my truth and even discover deeper parts of me as you are present? The art of hosting. And then there's the art of visiting. How do I leave my world, my opinions, my reality, my projections, everything in my world? How do I leave my world and with new eyes in the present, cross the bridge now, and land in your world to get to know you? Art of hosting, art of visiting. And then I teach the metaphor of the neighborhoods. So the neighborhoods are all the things that we experience. For example, in my world, there is a neighborhood called My New Yumi. It's a neighborhood under construction. I'm just building it now. There is a neighborhood called my grandchildren. And now there's a new neighborhood, my great-granddaughter. And so each one of those neighborhoods have deep experiences. And I'm going to tell you very soon a story to tell you how this occurs. I'll give you an example of the visit to a neighborhood and the crossing of the bridge and the arriving at the encounter. And so I'm going to put a semicolon here. And again, I'm going to take two of you who would like to say what in this section of my talk has touched you the most.
So if you can raise your hand with the reaction button or just unmute yourself so that Lisa and I can call on two people to share. And what comes to mind, what image or what moment or what experience comes to mind when you hear Haiti speak?
Well, I guess I can share because I don't see any hands, but I'm willing to give up my share if somebody else wants to say something. But what comes to mind for me, beyond like, you know, obviously having to learn my husband's language over all these years, is now I'm a mother-in-law and bringing a whole new family, a whole new neighborhood of people and their way of communicating into my neighborhood. And it is like you have to hear what they're saying, because at first it's like a little clashy and it happens instantly, and you have to just learn to step back and just listen and learn their language. And and that resonates completely with me now, the learning the other neighborhood's language and crossing that very narrow bridge.
And crossing a very narrow bridge.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so glad you gave that example, because it's true. It's a completely different world with a different culture. And you really can cross that bridge and learn them.
Haiti, can we hear from two other people? Is that okay? We have two other, Susan Goldstein and then Jen. I see. Susan, do you want to unmute yourself? Go ahead.
I thought I did. Aren't
Yeah,
I?
you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. I just find this something that sounds more like a dream than something that could be my reality. I've been married to my husband like working on 11 years, and to suddenly relate to each other the way you're saying is like, I don't know how.
Yes, it's a completely novel and different way. And I'm going to give you an example of how Yumi and I use it with each other, which will give you the steps but I can see that for you, you wonder, can we actually communicate that way?
No.
I love the fact that you're just so honestly saying, I don't know. Can we do that? You may not be the only one in this big group of people saying, can we do that? Absolutely. Oh, thank you for that honesty and vulnerability. It's beautiful.
Jen and then Michelle.
Hi, Hetty. I'm Jan, and I've really enjoyed your talk so far. Greetings from Burlington, Vermont. That's where I live.
Oh.
And I was thinking as you were talking that this is a COVID story. This is a story for those of us, and most of us, I think, who have been living in the same space with our spouses, with our children. And we've had to learn a new language almost, because in our professional lives, we have that language. And in our family lives, we have a different language, or maybe not so much different, but it's a more intimate language, I guess I would say. So COVID has brought us together in this remarkable way, not just here on Zoom, but in our own homes, in our own lives, in our own hearts. And I find it wonderful. It's illuminating to me to find and see and enjoy and relate to my husband, who I learn something new every day because of this kind of closeness. So every day I'm crossing a new bridge, and I love that.
Jen, thank you. Michelle, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yes. No, I love your metaphors about crossing a bridge. And I mean, I'm married. I'm laughing, Susan. Now I've seen you on Zoom like 2 days in a row, but I'm going on 36 years of marriage and married to a man who has traveled his whole life for business. And despite COVID, has retired like 2 years ago, only to stay home because of COVID. So I think with all the stages we go through in life, we're constantly having to cross a new bridge to reinvent or to get into that sacred space of our marriages, because it takes a lot of work. And as my husband and I always have said, it's a lot of communication. It's a lot of, talking things out with each other and crossing those bridges to make new discoveries.
Exactly. That is
Thanks,
really good.
Michelle.
Yes, thank you. And so I'm going to tell one more story, because you may wonder, so how does it work? What do you do? And so I'm going to tell you a story about when my husband Yumi, who then had a quadruple bypass operation, and then he had 2 stents and 2 stents and 2 stents. And when he got the last 2 stents, he had complications. And the doctor said to him, Yumi, don't travel. You're such a big traveler. Don't travel. Don't even go from Orlando to Miami to see your father. We came home and Yumi said, Haiti, as you know, we're going to go see my father for sure. And we're going to go to South Africa. I did not cross the bridge. I said, Yumi, to South Africa? The doctor says, don't go to Miami. You want to go to South Africa? Yep, I think we need to go to South Africa. No, Yumi, really, please. And I forgot everything about the bridge. I was terrified for my husband, who wants to go on this very big journey. The doctor says no. And so I called our 2 sons and I said, listen, Pops is, I don't know what's the matter with him. The doctor says rest. And as I'm talking to my sons, I'm realizing that I'm doing something very, very wrong. And it's called a triangle. It's where you take your children in alliance against the partner. I'm the good one, the smart one, the protective one, the one who's thinking, and he's not. And I realized I did that in our family life. And I said to our boys, listen, guys, I'm going to explain to you something very, very wrong that I'm doing right now, that I'm for the first time seeing so clearly. It's called a triangle, and I'm going to get out of the triangle and I'm going to go and talk to Pops, and Pops is going to talk to me. We're going to cross the bridge to each other. And so the first good thing that happened out of this is really the realization of breaking the triangle. And I went to Yumi and I said, Yumi, what do you think? We're teaching the bridge. Should we maybe do it? He said, absolutely, we should do it. And so here's what we did. And I'm now describing to you every step of the bridge. The first thing we did is we sat across from each other at 18 inches, because 18 inches is where a baby looks at mom and dad. When a child wants your attention, they take your face and bring it at 18 inches. Pay attention to me, because at 18 inches, all you see is the face. You don't see the surroundings. And so you sit at 18 inches because you really want to deeply look into each other's eyes. And the first thing you do to establish the bridge is you look with gratitude. You look with gratitude just for this moment of life, just for having this partner in your life, for having had a journey up to now. You just look with gratitude. And when Yumi and I looked at each other with gratitude after those 2 weeks of power struggle, we both just had tears in our eyes, because we hadn't sat down to look softly at each other. In the power struggle, you throw daggers with your eyes. And here we are now at 18 inches from each other, just saying thank you. And that moment is a Sheheyanu moment. Sheheyanu vekimanu vehigiyanu lazman hazeh, that we were brought to life and we were nurtured and we were brought to this very moment to celebrate life. And so we did that. We said the Sheheyanu prayer and looked at each other. And then a nice thing we like to do before we start the visit, the visit itself, is just to take each other's hands and let our hands talk with our eyes closed, just to ground ourselves a little bit in that beautiful language of the hands. And then we opened our eyes and we made a decision, who is going to be the first host? And I asked Yumi, could I be the first host? And he said, absolutely. And so I invited him, and this is the invitation. Yumi, I'm inviting you to cross the bridge and come to me. There is a neighborhood I'd like to explore in my world with you. And Yumi said, with pleasure, I accept your invitation. And he slowly walked over the bridge and landed in my world and said, I'm with you. And as soon as he landed, I actually clearly saw the neighborhood. And the neighborhood was, don't die. Yumi, don't die. And I just spoke it out and I began to sob, and he just held me. And he held me and he held me and I sobbed it out. Don't die, Yumi. And I knew that was the only thing I wanted to say to him. Don't die. I was terrified. And as a host, you don't say many words. You just say the important ones. And he held me and he held me. And suddenly I felt him also crying, because he too entered into that neighborhood of don't die. He felt it for himself. And here we were together in this encounter of the souls, because when you enter the encounter, there is a commonality to our humanity. Don't die. And he held me for the longest time and cried with me. And when I was really done, I had sobbed out my last sob, I said, I'm ready to come over the bridge to you. And so Yumi invited me. Haiti, I'm inviting you to cross the bridge and come to me. I'd like to explore a neighborhood of my world. I accept your invitation. I came over. I'm with you. And he said 3 sentences that have completely changed my life. And I'm going to give you the 3 sentences he said. The first one, Haiti, I'm not a heart. I am a man with a heart. And what I realized when I heard him say that is something Martin Buber teaches. Martin Buber says you can treat another person as a person, or you can treat them as an object. They can be thou, the highest in the human, the soul thou, or they can be it, an object. And if you had said to me, asked me, Haiti, would you ever objectify Yumi? I would say never, ever, ever. Well, I did objectify him. I made him into a heart. I was watching that heart. I didn't want anything to happen to that heart, but I was forgetting that he's a man with a heart. And I took that in deeply, deeply, deeply till my toes heard the message. And then I did what the visitor does. I said, I hear you say that you are not a heart. You are a man with a heart. Am I with you? Which is the question you asked. Yes. Tell me more. He told me the second thing. And the second thing was the following. This man with this heart that I am wants to say yes to the question, is this a good day to die? Wow, I suddenly understood that it's not a good day to die when you're half dead anyway. It's a good day to die when you're welcoming life, when you're alive and vibrant and passionate and doing. That's a good day to die. The Professor Leibovitz from Jerusalem says there is no death. There's live, 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 not live. And what he was really saying with that is a good day to not live is a day where you live. And Yumi was saying to me, I want to say to that Malach HaMavet, when he comes knocking at the door, this is a good day. I'm alive, vibrantly. And I understood him, and I realized that I was going to control him and have him be half alive so he wouldn't be completely dead. And I realized that's not loving. And so I repeated his sentence. I said, I hear you say that this man that you are with this heart wants to say yes to the question, is this a good day to die? Am I with you? Yes. Tell me more. And then he said, well, this man with this heart who wants to say, yes, it's a good day to die, wants to go to South Africa. And so what we did then is we together built the third option. So my father used to say, when there are two options, pick the third. And so there was an option not to go. There was an option to go the way we had planned with lots of work and 3 countries in Africa. And so together we decided, what's the third option? We're going to go, but we're going to go only to Johannesburg, and we're going to do 1 workshop together. And the rest of the time was going to celebrate Yumi's 70th birthday, which it was. And you know, when you build a third option in connection, miracles happen, because we were upgraded by a friend to a suite in the Hyatt we stayed at in Rosebank. It was a suite like we've never even known that suites exist. It was filled with chocolate cakes and the fridge with food. People had just celebrated us so that we would come in just feeling like a king and a queen. And on our way back, the pilot of South African that piloted our plane had been to our workshop and upgraded us to first class South African Airlines. And so these miracles were just happening because Yumi and I, in deep connection with each other, had revealed a third option, and we celebrated his 70th there. In May, my sweet man is going to celebrate 90. So this is 20 years ago, where we learned that in deep connection, a third option reveals itself. And so I'm going to stop again, and I'm going to listen to 2 people who just out of this part have been inspired by something that touched them.
Please raise your hand through the reactions or unmute, or Lisa or I can pick you, or you can put your name in the chat. Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
Sure. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, Amy, and then Michelle, or whoever. Yeah.
I
Michelle,
just want to say, I love how her husband phrased, and this is a good day to die. It's a very interesting philosophy that I love what you're saying as far as, you know, live until you die. That's awesome, especially as we're going through COVID now with everything that, you know, people are worrying about. That you do, you're right. You have to live first, and having the third option. Thank you. I'm learning a lot here.
Thank you, Michelle.
Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, I also wanted to comment on the third option. I was having a conversation recently with my husband, and we were talking about this notion of compromise in relationship. And I so appreciate the languaging of the third option, because it doesn't feel like a compromise. It feels like something that has been co-created, and there is more investment and it feels holier. I don't know how else to describe
Right,
it, but I
right.
really appreciate the language of co-creating a third option instead of feeling like, well, let's compromise. You know, you're not going to get your way and I'm not going to get my way, but we'll just both compromise. So this really raises the level of just connection and beauty and intensity. So thank you.
I love the way you say that. And you're right about the difference between compromise, where both people win something but lose something. And the third option, everybody gains, but it can only be created out of that deep connection in which you have heard each other's soul. You know, you've really stepped in and you've heard each other, and then it reveals itself and you co-create it. Yes, indeed.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. So I have actually told you guys all I wanted to tell you tonight, and I have felt your attention. And what I'm going to do is put you in gallery so I can see who is here. Oh my goodness. Whoa. This is amazing. This is amazing. Wow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
What a beautiful group. Thank you for your.
Hello, Haiti.
Hello, hello. I
Uh,
recognize the voice. I don't see the person.
Larry,
Larry, there you are, Larry.
one of the original members of the Boo Brigade.
It's true. One of the original members of the group.
I just have to say that it's knowing you as long as we have, it's an honor, it's a joy, it's a pleasure, but mostly it's like a wonder that you are like one of the 7 wonders of the world. You're the 8th wonder of the world. I've never met anybody like you. And I'm sure the people agree here that, you know, when you had the cancer, and then I had it many years later, I sort of modeled my attitude towards my cancer the way you handled yours. And it helped a lot, helped me in my life. And I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you, guys. Thank you, Larry and Susan. I see you there in that little
Brigade story.
Say it again.
I would like to share a boob brigade.
A boo brigade story.
I'm just gonna, before you do that, Susan, I just want to let people know that you can either put questions in the chat or raise your hand. Go ahead, Susan.
Our daughter Rachel is a huge fan of Haiti's. And when Haiti was back home after the surgery, she wanted, and she was early teens at the time, she wanted to go to see Haiti with me. And I was concerned because Haiti had the big C. And how do you expose a young kid really to the big C? So I prepared her, you know, she may not be the usual Haiti, she may, you know, whatever. And we walk in, and there is Haiti, sitting surrounded by pillows, the same face that you see now, bright sunshine, bald, wearing an amazing caftan. And Haiti welcomes Rachel as though Rachel was a princess coming to visit a queen. And I stood there paralyzed. Rachel went up to Haiti and gave her a hug and they talked. I was still stuck in the old paradigm of the big C.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it took me a little bit of time to realize this is a different world. This is not the world where I perceived it would be. And it was a different world, Haiti, because of you.
Susan, I want to leave time for other people. Thank you for that story. If we have other hands raised or questions in the chat, while we're waiting for questions, Haiti just reminds me.
There's Enid. She raised her hand.
Oh, great. Enid, go ahead.
I just wanted to say how much I love the way you use your life, Haiti, to teach people in the most beautiful, loving way how to be in the world. Love Donna Kepler.
Oh.
So there are amazing I love so many of our congregants who are therapists are with us, and I love that they're here. Like Haiti, you should just know how they help the community, and you must be feeling their well right now because it is not easy to be a therapist right now. You're giving all yourself out. But if you have compliments to give Haiti, it's a beautiful thing. Please put them in the chat. And if you have questions or things like that, just because I don't want to waste any ability for people to ask questions. So Lisa, if you want to keep an eye on if there's questions for people, and just want to re-accentuate where you started about it's your decision to view the difficulty of a conversation, or you can call it a joy and an adventure. I learned something during COVID called verbal judo, where like I'm a New Yorker, a Leo, and an eldest child, and sometimes I'm difficult in conversation. And in order to tamp that down, like learning to talk to people where you're like excited to have a difficult conversation because you can view it as an opportunity to grow and learn from the other person. So if you can talk a little bit about how do you get unstuck from viewing things as negative and challenge and difficult, and instead changing to the positive. And there are beautiful comments coming in the chat. Just trust me here.
You're asking Rabbi Jessica. So that's when we came up with that metaphor of the neighborhoods. So there are all kinds of neighborhoods. So there are tough neighborhoods. And it's a very important thing to also visit tough neighborhoods, but they're just neighborhoods of our world. They're not a problem. They are a neighborhood in our world, and maybe one that's scary to go in. And that's why it's nice to invite somebody over the bridge. Come with me. I want to visit a tough neighborhood, and I don't know how to go in there by myself. And so hold my hand, and I'm going to go in there. And so the neighborhoods became a way of being able to describe everything that lives in our world. And so there is not positive or negative. There's neighborhoods.
I love the bridge metaphors ever since it's on your website. Someone's asking in the chat, maybe you can just update us a little bit. They're asking, do you give workshops? So tell us what's going on, like in normal times, do you give workshops in person? What are you doing in COVID? Let us know like your professional life a little bit, and if we're able to learn from you in other ways.
Yes. So the first thing I want to say is that in January 2019, Yumi and I gave our last workshop as a couple. And we said to everyone that we're not going to do any more workshops together, which was the right thing at the time. And what was amazing is Yumi wasn't feeling well. He stayed in the room. And at the end of the workshop, I said, normally Yumi would be here. We would hold hands and we would go around the circle to look at all of you to say goodbye. And there the door opens and there was Yumi. And so we did our last circle together to say goodbye to the couples. So that workshop we don't do anymore. And I don't do that one alone. What I did before Corona Shmorona is that I used to see couples for 2 or 3 day intensives. And it was my beloved work. And that's what I love the most. I also did trainings for therapists. And then Corona Shmorona knocked at the door. And I didn't think that I could do my work on Zoom because I was so attached to seeing everything, even the toes that move. But somehow I pivoted to doing my work on Zoom. And what I do is I do a 10 session instead of the 2 or 3 full day intensive. I do 10 sessions of 2 hours, and I do the journey that I did before Corona Shmorona. I do it now, you know, I see a couple every week for 2 hours. And I've discovered that the encounter happens on Zoom. We are having it now together with each other. Isn't dependent on being there in person because the soul transcends. And I've really learned that. And I'm delighted with the work I get to do now, you know, on Zoom.
You'll be so proud of Lisa, which is where this story starts. Sisterhood has like just put their guts into this. Lisa and Karen as co-presidents, the board, Sisterhood board, of which a lot of members are here, and those who've come, they've just put their guts into Zoom and creating community. And until we can be together, we have learned what a beautiful, powerful space that Zoom can. I mean, I've been on the verge of tears all night with your speaking. And it's just a beautiful thing to hear you, and you should be so proud of Lisa, because she's brought her A game along with her co-president, and we just can't thank you enough for being with us tonight. You're incredible. There's so many blessings. I'm going to give you a second to look at the chat and for people to put appreciation in the chat. I want to just talk for 1 second about crossing a bridge that's going to be happening for our Women's Seder experience. Kira, if you'll put up the slide. There was a woman named Mara God, and she went on a trip to Israel when she was in her early 20s. And on that trip, there was a boy who liked her, and she liked that boy. And she tried to break the ice with him. And he looked at her and he said, I could never bring you home to my parents because you're Black. Even though you're Jewish, I can't bring you home to my parents because you're Black. And this started a journey for Mara of this complicated life of living as a Jew, adopted, and Black, and a journey that she's taken dealing with racist relatives, dealing with a world that has been very unkind and cruel to her. And she used that experience to put together a book called The Color of Love. I was on that Israel trip. I've known Mara since her 20s. And I thought, and we've reconnected because we're bringing her here for a Passover Seder experience. And I said, Mara, I remember that trip is so fun and so wonderful. And she said, Jessica, that incident that happened, it's in the book. That's how painful that trip was to me, that someone told me they couldn't bring me home to their parents because of the color of my skin. And so I think from Haiti, we've learned tonight about the bridges we need to cross in our own homes and our own places. But there's a lot of bridges in our world that are broken that we're trying to repair and hear and sit in a space and listen. And if you love tonight, I promise you, with Mara and this Passover Seder experience on the 5th night of Passover, you don't have to set up any Seder at home or anything like that. You will once again just be blown away by our sisterhood and the intention that they put into bringing the most moving and beautiful programming that they can, because there's a lot of a part of us that's very broken. And when we come together like this, we heal those broken parts, we build that bridge back up, and we really help one another get through this time. So Haiti, once again, I can't thank you enough. I urge everyone, if you can sign up for that Seder, if you can be a sponsor, and just very deep, incredible thanks to our sisterhood, who is, like I said, like left it all on the table to provide for our, not just our synagogue, but really a country and the world, because we have people in other countries with us tonight. The best programming. Lisa and Karen, I'm going to just leave the last word to you, because I know, Lisa, this is personal for you with your dear friend, and Haiti, just the love is coming through on the chat.
It really is so amazing that the essence of who you are can come through a screen, because you don't know if it's going to translate, but it really does. Your energy and your spirit is so strong that, you know, it just comes through. And I'm just really honored to have had you and shared you with my temple sisters. And I see a lot of my Orlando friends here too. And I love that it's combined my two worlds. It bridged my two worlds. One of my camp counselors from when I was 12 is here. So that is just amazing. And I just love everything that you said. And if we can all just take something away from this, you know, just one thing that you've said, I think we can all heal our world, just one person at a time, just understanding that, you know, we have to take our own bags and leave them at the door and go in to meet someone else with their bags at the door, so that we can be kind to one another.
And thank you, Lisa. And I just want to thank Isabella and Kira, our amazing producers. We're blessed with this unbelievable temple staff that has worked side by side with the sisterhood. Kira's had a very sad week. Her father in Kiev has passed away, and yet she wanted to be here. And so our hearts go out to you. Isabella makes everything gorgeous. This Color of Love graphic, and everything that she does for us is just beautiful and wonderful. And our, our temple staff sits right alongside with our congregants and going through this together and just creating a loving community. So have a beautiful night. Haiti, we can't thank you enough. And just everyone stay safe and well. Sign up for that Seder, bring friends. We want to have a reach around the world. It'll be a fantastic and beautiful and rich and deep evening. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you
with us.
all. I'm so glad. Thank you, Lisa, for organizing.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, Louise.
Thank you, Louise.